tapped into a podcast by The Smartest Animal, brought to you by A2X LTD, at the intersection of art and authenticity. Visit thesmartestanimal.com for more. The following series was recorded over the course of a year, moderated by Siri, hosted by A2.
Talk to me a little bit about how A2 was born, and beyond is there a deeper meaning to that as far as A2 goes?
Well, I haven't gone by AJ my whole life, so let's just start there. I haven't gone by AJ my whole life because I had different nicknames growing up. My first name is Asnel, and my second first name, because I have two, is Agapito. So let's look at my stage name. My stage name is A2 Nalito, and that's just basically a condensed version of those two names. A, Asnel, A, Agapito, so the two A's. And the last three letters of those first two names. So NEL and then ITO. A2 Nalito, Asnel, Agapito. So Asnel is my dad's name, my father. Agapito is my grandfather's name on my mom's side. I'm the first boy in the family because she has three sisters. So from the jump, when we're talking about A2 and the inception, I had to come up with a stage name. For me, it was important to come up with a stage name that represented nobody else but me. Like, again, like going back to that self-awareness and that authenticity. Like, there's nobody in the world with my government name, because the rest of my name is much longer when you put it all together, like on the birth certificate. So this was just a way of finding like my identity within myself, but also creating an artist identity that I didn't know was going to make Film Hop or, be on Twitter Spaces networking with people worldwide. But I knew I at least had a bucket artistically in my mind that I could just be like, all right, let me just put that in there. But going back to what I was called prior to AJ and then like the creation of A2, it kind of all happened in succession. I was called JR growing up because I was a junior. I had my dad's name, right? So it was junior in the family, but like JR, and like what ended up happening was people thought that JR were initials for something else that had nothing to do. I have no initials. I don't have an initial J. I don't have an initial R in my name at all. It's other letters, right? So that was strike one for me. And then strike two was just people keep asking me all the time, like, well, what does it mean? Like, and just, having to explain my name. It's just like, I got tired of explaining, and I just wanted to come up with something that just made sense off rip, and I could just, shut down the conversation if I wanted to. So that's where AJ came from. And I came up with AJ by the time I was 16. I was moving from New Jersey to North Carolina. So it was really easy for me to just step into a new school and be like, hey, I'm AJ. Boom. Problem solved. And like for me, it was like the ultimate chess move, because I wanted to, be me. And like, again, like kind of this identity crisis of just me being like my own person, as opposed to living under like the shadow of, what my family was expecting of me, and just like things that like we grew up around. And additionally, what that meant, like we're talking about like in terms of faith, we're talking about in terms of culture, we're talking about in terms of environment, and just like even like places where we lived, as far as dictating that. So it was there's a lot of nuances that come with the name change, as opposed to that straightforward story. But the most important thing for me was just I had to be clear about who I was as a person. Like, I'm AJ, like I'm not JR, I'm AJ. AJ stands for Arsenal Jr. But interestingly enough, last night I was talking to somebody at work, and they had asked me that question, and I was just like, you know what? I don't feel like telling this whole story that I'm telling Siri in an interview. I'm just going to shut it down. It's just AJ. What does it stand for? Just AJ. You know what I mean? So going into A2, that happened in college. 16, I was still in high school, my sophomore year. So I went into college writing a lot more, of course, learning instruments along the way. My parents were very big on me, like just learning all these instruments beyond piano, which I started at the age of 4. And then by the time I got to sophomore year of college, I was basically, long story short, making a career change And part of that was understanding like how much formal education I was going to do with music, because I was in a lot of classical contexts. I was still in a classical context on a collegiate level, even though that's how I started. And I was taking a very different, modern, alternative improvisational path. So I knew that I had enough to make a minor, and I made that change then. But moving forward, I was like, all right, any investment I'm going to make in music is going to be with my dollar. So what am I going to do beyond this that is going to, make this? Because, like there was never a thought of, oh, I'm going to stop playing music or like that. Never. So it was just a matter of like, what is the identity moving forward? How am I branding myself? I had a couple of names that I was trying out as I was writing poetry and blogging it when I was younger, but nothing really stuck to the point where I was like, all right, let me move forward with conviction on this. Then A2 came about as I was just looking at my name. It was just the most natural thing to do. I wasn't trying to, cop a corny ass stage name or just, get some, have anything or be affiliated with anybody that would, make me seem more popular or, really just deviate from anything other than authenticity. So I was like, let me just start with my name and let's figure something out. And that's how A2 Nolito was born.
That's killer, man. What I love about all of this is, you can see the intention in the way you move, right? The authenticity is kind of, I talk a lot about, you got to have a mission statement. Well, you can tell that A2 is, look, I got to be authentic, and that's it, right? If nothing else, that's what I got to put out into the universe. You mentioned, and I want to stick here for a second, you mentioned a little about the expectations of your family, right? And you mentioned that you've got expectations on your faith and maybe a few other things. Playing instruments was also one of those expectations. And it sounds like anyway. And from that, were there other instruments you got into? And then were there instruments that your parents would have preferred you played, or maybe lanes or styles they would have preferred you stayed in? And just talk to me a little about how you chose maybe to break away from that a little bit. Just because, again, authenticity is very important to you. I know those cultural ties and that family ties, for me anyway, is very strong. Like, I don't want to disappoint these people. These people are everything to me. But at the same time, I got to figure out what I got to do for myself. So anyway, just touch on that. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think it really starts at a point of faith. Like, I am a man of faith, but and I grew up in faith. However, just the perspective that I've had on my faith has changed as I've grown older and seen very real events, from things that have happened in my family to more internal things like that to more external things like the pandemic. So, but in all of this, I've kept this faith central to my life more than anything else in the world. And I believe in God. And what I did on a music level with that was just always maintain my commitment to minister in music. The very first track on my very first album is called Vessel, because that's how I view myself as an artist. More than anything else, just being a vessel of, the message that I carry, the message of authenticity, the message of self-awareness, the message of just being you, doing you, but also not only staying to you, tapping into your community who cares about you, and knowing that and understanding that and not being naive about it. So, my parents put me in music with the intention of me having this, to this day, conviction of, this faith being important to me. But as far as like these nuances that I mentioned earlier, which is really like a whole different podcast conversation, but I sent to you as my first podcast interview back in 2015 with that Ryan Becker joint. The whole point of it was just for me to kind of stay in that lane, and like these nuances, are here and there. Moving forward, I learned other instruments, clarinet, violin, bass clarinet. I did a semester of organ in college. It was beautiful. I can work my way around like guitar and bass. It was always piano, and much to the delight of my parents, they were happy to see me just like super interested into it. But the more innovative I became with my art, as far as just anything beyond the church ministry that I still do to this day, the more it became a point of contention. And so this created like, you know, decades of just conversations that, you know, like, again, it's just so much to unpack. But I think what I found in all of that was just like me continuing to ask myself, like, is this something that you want to do? Is this like A2 persona, the A2 brand, A2 Nalito, the artist, the pianist producer? Is this something that you want to keep doing? And every single year, every single moment, every single argument, the continual answer was a resounding yes. So, you know, again, like, it's this fine line of, you know, standing up for who you are, but, you know, at the same time, like, respecting like who brought you into this world, and, you know, what they have, you know, what they have instilled in you as a human and as an adult. And so coexisting, that is interesting, but I've always kept the main thing, and everything else has figured itself out. So they didn't really have any other instruments in particular they wanted me to play. I mean, we always talk about stuff. What was really satisfying to my mom in particular was being able to accompany her the older I got and the better I got as a pianist. And so doing that in church was always like special to her. And so, you know, we will have those moments and times again. You know, for my dad, being able to be around and, you know, be that pianist while he's ministering around the world as he does, that brings joy. You know, my sister and I have an older sister, and we do the same thing with musically. But as far as what I'm working towards as A2, as an artist moving forward, it's really multidisciplinary and not just the music thing. And, you know, those who get it, you know, who have that entrepreneurial fire, and the, you know, those, you know, who are in those second and third circles of association, you know, they'll hear about it at some point. It's a legacy that I'm building. It's not necessarily, you know, anything that has to do with AJ, because AJ's squaring things away and making sure that the bills are getting paid. And once A2 hits the stage, you know, it's about, again, being a vessel.
Yeah, I heard you talk about that in a previous interview, where you ultimately are just a vessel for the message. And I had a question about that, so I appreciate that you elaborated on that already, because it, you know, it certainly seems like, again, just that authenticity and making sure that whatever that message is and that mission that you've got, that the message you want to deliver comes through in every chord almost that you know, every key that you bang away on. So I love that for sure. No, and I think that, you know, what I've heard in your music and I've seen in the things you're doing is really trying to bring those contrasts together, right? To your point, things that don't necessarily make sense. Do you think that has anything to do with your cultural upbringing? You know, so I'm a mutt, frankly, right? You know, I'm mixed background, right? My mom is Caucasian, my dad is Asian from Thailand, and so certainly there's a lot of that contrast that I relate to as a result of my cultural upbringing. You know, aside from all my passion projects, but any of that resonate with you as far as kind of how you think of the world and maybe the way you grew up?
Yeah, I was blessed to be in a multicultural household that was not shy, and was very proud of being who they are. I'll start on my dad's side. My dad is from Haiti. I put a very short thread earlier about Haitian Flag Day, which is on May 18th. And that's when the flag was created in light of the Haitian Revolution being won in 1804. When the Haitians got their independence from the French. So this is a very, very big deal for Haitians, and my dad being a Haitian, even more so. And we come from a very big family, see each other multiple times throughout the year and sometimes on a weekly basis. And that, even as an introvert who like really just had to find his footing in social context, that really is a big part of my life, and the music as well. But it started with the culture and just the attitude, in the way that we embrace ourselves. And even though my mom is from the Philippines, and she's not as, you know, I relate to her personality wise more because she's a lot more to herself, and she internalizes a lot more with her thoughts and things like that. It is still a culture that is very rich. Anytime you go to a Filipino food, you're gonna get household, you're gonna get fed, and it's a blessing. And every Filipino that I meet is always interested in each other. They're very community oriented. I'll give a very good example. again, work in physical therapy. We usually work with the elderly, and there was an elderly Filipino couple that came in at the same time as another one. And I told them about each other. I was like, hey, like these guys are Filipino. And like we always get super excited. I get excited when I tell them like, hey, like my mom's from the Philippines. Like, oh, no way. Like where, like what area, like all these questions that like mean a lot to us culturally. So, and it went so far as those patients wanting to keep in touch because, you know, they like, hey, like let's get lunch together kind of situation, and being able to facilitate that is beautiful. So like there's a very community centric approach in my family, and it's the way that I approach my art, in the sense of, again, like I tell people all the time, the art is not for me to keep, it's for me to share. So if it was for me to keep, like you guys wouldn't know about it. Like some people are super talented and they choose to keep that information for themselves. From varying, you understand what I'm saying? So so it definitely overall, like both sides of my family and beyond the places that I grew up in, New York and other states, they really have like brought me into this, you know, into this energy of, yeah, like we're going to bring community into it. And it's had like a really big impact on how I move as an artist, especially now that I'm an adult. The word for me this year is undeniable. I want the art, I want my soul, I want everything that I say and do to be undeniable. It's Most Def has a song called Undeniable, and it really just, you know, kind of set that off for me, where it's just like, yeah, like I kind of come into the room like with that energy.
Well, I love it because, you know, that's a theme for me as well, is, you know, be so damn good that it doesn't matter what barriers in front of you, you're going to be undeniable, right? I mean, you know, let's use a basketball reference. Nikola Jokic is a great example. That dude potentially could have had a bunch of things in his face that said, but he's so damn good, it doesn't matter what, you know, what's in our face. He's just so damn good that he's undeniable, right? But anyway, just from that perspective, you know, from you, it's like, I want to be sonically so good. I want to be, you know, at all these avenues and mediums that I'm tackling, I want to be so damn good that it's, you know, it doesn't matter who's in my way, who's in front of me. I'm going to be undeniable. There's no denying A2's existence and his presence in the space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond that. I will always say that it goes beyond just like A2 as, you know, me, because what I'm trying to write and express, that is to live forever. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not going to live forever. I know that. So that music will live forever, and, you know, motivate the next generation to just continue to appreciate who they are, and be convicted in what they believe in as persons, as people, as artists, as musicians. I think that's important. That's an important sentiment to instill for the people around us and the people that will come before us or will come after us. Because again, like the way that I see the world, there's just a lot, you know, of dissonance to where, you know, people are doubting, you know, that they are good at what they do, or that, you know, they have the wrong people in their ear, and, you know, they just are not around energy that would be able to inspire them and encourage them the way that, you know, that they deserve to. So, you know, being that person is like, I'll stand by that, but I don't take that like as a personal responsibility. I just live my life this way, and, you know, in a sense, be that change that I want to see, without having to like hound anybody. Just be like, oh, like you don't do this. Like, nah, like it's just anything that I want to see different. Like it starts here, and like I'm starting to see that like around me.
The first three will be pretty quick. Just your favorites. Favorite food.
Favorite food, that's got to be anything that the family makes. You know, anything with rice and beans. You know, or just
Let's
like
go.
white rice. You know, that's just like, that's a great starting point. Like, you know, collect 200 as you go. Like, what is that? How it goes in Monopoly? So
Yep, you got it. You got
that's
it.
my 200 right there. So, you know, we start there.
All right, cool. Favorite cartoon.
Ed, Ed, and Eddie.
Okay, Ed, and Eddie. Any particular reason?
I really appreciated just like it was just quirky at a time when I felt like I was in a like a very like do this, like you gotta like very formal kind of atmosphere. Like I felt like Ed and Eddie
Got
was
you.
just almost the complete opposite of that, and it was just loose and it was carefree. Dudes was, you know, Eddie was a hustler. You know, Ed didn't give a grip, and then Double D was just like really smart dude. And it's just like I saw like, you know, they were all very different, but they all got along. And I see that in like my relationships and my friendships. But it was just, you know, just a great thing to just like throw up and like just kick back and
Yep.
like Saturday weekend cartoons, you know?
Let yourself unwind a little bit from that very serious life you were living at the moment.
Yeah, it's just I always felt like, you know, it was always like you gotta look a certain way, you gotta talk like this. And you know, it's helped me like with rapport and like the professional world. But I
Sure.
felt like I didn't really delve into a lot of personality when I was growing up, and I was just spending so much time trying to like mirror other people that I could instead of just being me. And I felt like Ed and Eddie, like it was just like they were just them, like they were just doing them on the
Yep.
pod.
No, let's put a pin on that because I think that's an interesting conversation for, you know, trying to find your own voice in a sea of, you know, trying to do what you're told and, you know, mind your P's and Q's, if you will. Next one, favorite villain.
Favorite villain, Joker.
Oh, that's a good one, man. That's a good. Do you have any? Is there anything that kind of resonates with you? Anything that kind of, you know, obviously his mania is maybe a little extreme, but you know, we could probably all relate to something that he's going through for sure.
Yeah, I feel like the Joker really just very much his own person, kind of just like what I was talking about with Ed and Eddie,
Yep.
where
Yeah.
like very individual, like kind of ride solo. That's kind of like been my lifestyle of just I'm just kind of carefree, do me. And he was just even the interesting about Joker is that he always impacted the plot, even though he wasn't physically like seen. There was always something that he was doing or scheming, and that like some villains are just like front and center. They're just like, you know, the final boss. Like you got to kill this thing like 8 times before it actually dies. Like it's always there. He was just more of like a behind the scenes dude, but he was always plotting, and that's me. I'm always plotting.
Well, I think also, you know, the protagonists are always, they've got to have Joker in the back of their mind, right? Like, what's going on? What's going on? What do we got to be worried about next? So I love that. I love that. All right, first pet peeve of yours that comes to mind. What just rubs you the wrong way?
Voicemail. Don't leave me a voicemail.
I'm the same way. My mailbox is full and it has never been emptied. People are like, your mailbox is full. I'm like, cool, text me.
Yeah,
So I'm with you.
exactly.
All right, favorite thing to waste money on. You know it's silly, but you still do it.
Cheez-Its.
Cheez-Its. Any
Yes.
particular flavor or just the OG?
The OG, man. I'll do white cheddar for sure, but Cheez-Its, man. Like I'm thinking about it right now.
Let's go. You know, one of the constant themes throughout, you know, our conversations here, but also just in you know, over time, has been kind of this idea that, you know, these projects never die, right? Almost like they never end, just like the evolution of you yourself, right? AJ, Valson, A2, A2X, right? Even some of the previous, even the logo design, right? And different things that, you know, have just completely evolved. Talk to me about how you think about ideas, how you think about ideation, right? And how you know, these projects continue to live on even after you might have put a stamp on it that's done. It feels like you're never really done. You never really set something down. And talk to me a little bit about how those projects to continue to move, how you continue to evolve, and how that feeds into the let them dream type of ethos.
Yeah, so the ideation process for me is so fluid. It's a fluid process. I think that allowing myself to dream increases that fluidity and in turn creates the space to flow in and out of states and seasons and stuff. Because when I look back over graphics and work that I've designed from, you know, different eras, you know, you see things that I'm like, yes, something's I'm like, you know, maybe not, that kind of thing. But that's probably why I never deleted anything, because the ideas for me never really die. Um, we can think about the life of a phoenix and how, that evolution takes place, and that burning sensation that you get from being alive with creativity just really exemplifies itself in the way that I go about things. So it's never really about throwing away ideas. It's about, really giving them a chance to take shape. And when it comes to publishing ideas, even with like the first Film Hop single as an example, I would never say that this is like the final iteration, because you can look and see it's like the single version, right? It's like editing a paper, a research paper. You can chop that up so many different ways, but ultimately that final expression is going to give you just an idea of how this idea manifests into reality. So letting them dream really just means like letting those ideas play out the way that they should, giving them a chance.
No, that's fantastic, right? Again, just it gets right back to allowing people to be them, be authentic, and represent themselves, and express themselves, if you will, through whatever their creative medium is, right? And certainly, the phoenix definitely represents that, right? As that bird gets born out of the ashes, that burning sense of desire to come out of the ashes, in that sense, to come back alive, but in this sense, right, to let your creativity spark from nothing, if you will, and kind of rise itself up to keep moving. So I love it. I love it. Okay, all these things, your creative passions, this is all the work, right? I mean, I know it's passion, I know it's love, I know you get after it, but it's also work, right? So what are you doing outside of it? What are you doing outside the music studio? What are you doing when you're not in front of the computer, right? What are you doing when you're not A2, right? When you're just AJ, away from all this stuff? What are you getting into, man?
What I am making sure that I look after is AJ, and this spills into creatively is A2, is my health and wellness. There's a song in my catalog called Rehab Gospel that leans into this story a little bit of, my constant struggle with lower back chronic pain, which is common to some people, especially if you're coming from this line of work of lots of sitting, lots of driving, lots of playing in the keys, lots of desk work, that kind of thing. And so it's really important for me to overall stay healthy, stay loose, stay stretched, you know, stay hydrated, stay regulated, put the right, correct inputs in, like take out all the bad inputs. Prior to this interview, went down to get a snack and, really happy with how my choices are evolving, picking a juice instead of a soda, like little things like that that make a difference in the long term, because for me, I feel myself wanting to become better. And those are the ways that I become better. And those are the things that I'm doing outside. And that's why the music that I make and the art that I create revolves around peace, revolves around creating space to be offline, revolves around having the inspiration to be by the ocean and be outside in the woods, because that's the same thing that I'm doing anyways. And when I'm there, I am so happy. I'm so happy to not have service. I'm so happy to, be disconnected for a little bit, because that's when I can really truly tap back in to, who I am as an individual, because we were never meant to be this overstimulated. Like when this interview gets done and when the day gets done, I am going to look forward to turning the screen off, because as a human, I understand in my soul that this is the way. When we shove all of this screen time and this digital coexistence, it kind of blurs the reality on, what and how we should go about interacting with it. So, this is a conversation that I like to have often, to emphasize that I think the best life is experienced offline. Conversations like this are needing the online connection, but I think the goal ultimately is to move beyond that. And one of the ways that we stay healthy um, in the mind is to regulate that time. Big theme of mine that I like to talk about.